The story started with a group of students who suddenly got summoned to another world while they were on their way to school. The king told them that for the past few years, the human kingdom had been fighting the demon nations and had taken huge losses and fallen deep into debt. Because of that, the country had been close to collapse, so they had decided to summon people from other worlds who had special powers. The students didn't really get what he meant, so they started checking their abilities. When they looked around, they realized that everyone else had some kind of special ability too. The black-haired girl didn't even know what a skill was, so a man told her that skills were powers people got when they came to that world. The king believed those skills were blessings from the gods. The boys were excited about becoming heroes, and the king was happy to see how strong they were, thinking that summoning them had been worth it. But one man pointed out that a boy named Tonami Norio didn't have any skills at all. Before getting summoned, Tonami Norio had lived a boring life as a useless office worker. Before he arrived in the other world, he had bumped into a chubby man on a train. That man had introduced himself as a god and said Tonami was about to get summoned to another world because his father had chosen him. He said his father was Zeus, the king of the gods. He also complained that Athena, who had been in charge until then, had been treating men unfairly. He introduced himself as Hephaestus and said he was good at making things. Since it had been his first time giving someone a skill, he said he had put in a lot of effort. The skill he gave Tonami was called Master of Supremacy. It had been hard to use, but he believed Tonami would figure it out. He had placed the skill core on Tonami's chest and finished the process. Back at the king's mansion, there was a lot of noise among the guardians. Tonami knew he had no ability to fight demons. He wanted to ask something, but the king was busy worrying about the fact that they could never send the heroes back to their original world. They knew how to summon heroes, but they had no way to send them home. Some people were shocked and thought it was a joke. The king explained that only the Demon King's leader knew how to do that, which was why they needed to fight the demon armies. Since Tonami had no skills, he could not take part in that battle. Instead, he asked for a piece of land. He did not care where it was, and only wanted a place to live quietly. Since he could not live the life he wanted before, he decided to live his second life in solitude. One of the king's men took him to a place and explained that he was free to live there. The land was outside the kingdom, which meant Tonami would have to live, farm, and harvest on his own, but he would not have to pay anything. The man took his guide fee and told him to live however he wanted, whether he lived or died. Tonami felt a little bad that they had spent money on him. After the man left, Tonami looked over the land he now owned, and his new life began. Normally, people would team up with others and go on big adventures, but he preferred a quiet and safe life with no action. He arrived at a beach and decided to make that place his own small kingdom. First, he needed to secure water, so he checked whether it was seawater or drinkable. To his surprise, it was fresh and safe to drink. He then noticed an octopus in the sea. Even though he wondered if octopuses really lived in shallow water, he decided to get food anyway. When he stepped into the sea, he noticed the water felt very salty, even though it had tasted sweet before. When he scooped water with his hands and drank it, it tasted sweet. But when he drank directly, it tasted salty. Since water did not seem to be a problem, he decided to eat the octopus he caught. He had no seasoning, so he cooked it using salt water and boiled it. First, he needed fire. He carved a hole into dry wood, made a notch, and inserted a stick into the hole. He rotated the stick with his hands and moved the embers created by friction onto a dry leaf. It was easier said than done, but he took a deep breath and kept spinning the stick with determination. Eventually, the fire lit up. While eating the octopus, he felt something strange about that world. Fire had started far too easily, and he had even managed to make a bowl and chopsticks without trouble. As he thought about how well everything was going, he realized that survival itself might have been the skill the god gave him. He decided to test it. When he swung a sickle, the grass was cut clean down to the roots. When he tried plowing, the land was perfectly prepared without any effort, exactly the size he had imagined for a field. The Master of Supremacy skill multiplied the efficiency of anything he held. Starting a farm became incredibly easy. He planted seeds after returning to town, and it was finished within minutes. He did not even know what he had planted, but as long as he could harvest it, food would not be a problem. Still, it would take time for the crops to grow. He decided to fish for dinner. While fishing, he thought about his old life and his new one, and he offered some rice balls to Mr. Hephaestus to thank him for the amazing skill. Soon, something bit the hook, and it felt big because it was hard to control. When he finally pulled it up, he realized he was not holding a fish, but a mermaid. At first, he could not believe he had fished up a girl, and then he realized she was a mermaid. The mermaid scolded him for catching her, and before he could say anything, she declared that since he had fished her up, he had to marry her. The distance between them suddenly dropped to 0, and he was left shocked that he had somehow ended up with a mermaid wife in another world. The mermaid continued complaining about her situation. While he was thinking about how different she looked compared to the illustrations in books, she said she could not return to the ocean anymore. He thought she was exaggerating, which only made her angrier. She shouted that she had no choice but to become his spouse and told him to take responsibility and provide for her. He tried to make excuses and asked her to think it through calmly. She agreed and said that with her tail, they would not be able to do anything anyway. She then pulled out a bottle and drank it. Her tail disappeared, her legs appeared, and she was completely naked. She looked relieved and said she could live on land without any problem and even have his children. Tonami panicked and told her to put some clothes on. In the heat of the moment, he accepted her as his wife, even though all he had was the field he had plowed earlier. She felt uncomfortable wearing clothes, but he firmly said he would not marry her unless she put on those pants. He promised to get her clothes she liked later. What mattered more right then was that they did not even have a roof over their heads. When he looked at the field, he saw the seeds had already started sprouting, which surprised him. She asked what he was growing, but he admitted he did not know either. He planned to become self-sufficient, make his own tools, food, and house, and live a simple life. It was very different from a mermaid's life, but she said she understood if that was what he wanted. She explained that medicinal magic was her species' ancestral magic and said she was actually famous for it. He did not believe her, so she said she would show him and told him to wait. She went back into the sea to collect her things. After she left, Tonami decided to build a simple house. Within an hour, he managed to put together a small shack. He got tired, went inside, and fell asleep while thinking about the mermaid, convinced she would not come back. She later woke him up, and he immediately told her to put some clothes on again. He asked where she had been all night, and admitted he had been really worried. She told him there was no need to worry and explained, as they stepped outside, that it had taken time to pack her medicinal tools. She said that by combining medicinal plants with magic, he could create medicinal effects. Those medicines had many uses, and since even ordinary people could use them, they were very valuable. She was not done yet and brought out a huge fish called a ba herring G, a monster fish filled with mana. She cut it, boiled it, extracted it, and turned it into powder. She called the result ba herring G fertilizer and said that spreading it on the field would make crops grow faster. Tonami was shocked that she was doing all that just for his farm. The next day, all the crops had fully grown. He admitted the fertilizer was amazing, but she proudly said the truly amazing one was actually her. He ignored that comment and tasted a tomato, which turned out to be delicious. She tried it too and was stunned by how good it was. She could not believe land dwellers ate food like this all the time. When she tried to eat green onions, he stopped her and explained that some vegetables had to be cooked first. Since she insisted, he boiled everything together and served it to her. She loved it and ate happily. Watching her smile while eating, he thought he could really live with her. She still could not believe humans ate food like this regularly. He said it would taste even better with meat or fermented herbs, which shocked her even more. While he made plans, she thought about how capable he was. He then asked her name, and she said it was Platy. He was about to tell her his real name, but changed his mind and said his name was Kidan. He told her he looked forward to living with her. That was how he started his new life as Kidan in another world with a mermaid. The next morning, Kidan woke up and noticed Platy was not in bed. He wondered if she was uncomfortable sleeping there and hoped she had not struggled. He suddenly heard her scream about someone being in the field. When he rushed out, he saw it was just a scarecrow holding a wooden sword. He explained that scarecrows scared birds away by making them think a human was there. Suddenly, the scarecrow started moving, which should have been impossible. He figured it was because of his skill. Platy asked if something was wrong with his hands, and he explained that he had been summoned by the king from another world. As he talked about his abilities, Platy realized he was one of the heroes. He was surprised she figured it out so quickly. She said she thought heroes were supposed to fight demonkind and asked what he was doing there. He replied that he did not like killing demons, so he had basically retired there. That surprised her because humans usually stuck together to survive, and those who did not were often killed by monsters. She wondered what made him different, but he said he was the same as other humans. He then started thinking about breakfast and remembered she had woken up early. He asked if she was okay and where she had gone. Her face turned red, and she admitted she had gone to the toilet. She asked where he usually did it, and when he said the ocean, she got angry. He tried to explain it logically, but she snapped and said she hated that insensitive side of humans and told him not to bring his old world's dirty habits into her ocean. He fell to his knees and apologized. She suddenly ran off, and he did not understand why, but he did not chase her. He realized he had forgotten some basic survival things and also felt relieved she was there with him. He wondered how she felt about everything. Platy soon returned and brought a starfish-shaped monster. She explained that those creatures absorbed waste and acted as cleaners of the ocean. If he kept one in a box, it could be used as a toilet. She cut her wrist to demonstrate, which shocked him, but she quickly showed that it healed instantly. He was amazed by her and apologized for being scared, careless, and dirty. He admitted that the reason he had fished her up was because of the power he received and told her she could return to the ocean if she wanted. She refused and said she liked him, which was why she wanted to support him as his wife. Kidan got shy and thanked her. She smiled and reminded him that even if life was easier now, he still had to make her breakfast. Elsewhere, deep in a dungeon, a demon sensed a strange mana nearby. Later, Platy showed him a skirt she had made from wrapping cloth she brought with her. He felt bad for not being more resourceful, but she said she did not mind since a wife wanted to look nice for her husband. She mentioned she was going out for the first time in a while. When he asked where, she said she had found a dungeon. She explained that dungeons were places where people explored underground, fought monsters, found treasure, and faced a boss at the deepest level, and she said it would be easier if he saw it himself. So she took him to the dungeon. It was about 2 hours away, and she said she had found it while he was working in the field. It was a cave-type dungeon. At first, it just looked like an ordinary cave to him, but the moment he stepped inside, he felt an overwhelming power. It felt like a huge animal was licking his face. She explained that in certain places, the energy flowing through the world would stop and stagnate. Those places became dungeons, and the mana inside them kept getting denser. Eventually, that mana condensed and was reborn as monsters. The monsters born in dungeons would later overflow and invade the land and the oceans. She added that completely cleansing a dungeon was nearly impossible, so people had to come back from time to time to beat down the monsters. Before he could object, she went straight inside. Since she was his wife, he decided to follow her into the dungeon. The inside looked nothing like the entrance. It felt more like a castle. Platy suddenly sensed something strange and realized there were already monsters inside. A group of different monsters rushed toward them. She told him to stay back and pulled out several small tubes. She threw them, and explosions went off. Kidan was already amazed, but she did not stop there. She froze the monsters, struck them with lightning, and finally melted them away. All of that was done using her battle medicine. She kept moving forward while he wondered how he could not even tell which one was the real threat. He let her handle everything, feeling useless without a weapon he could properly use. He looked around and picked up a sword, but it did not seem like he would get a chance to use it. He told her she had already defeated plenty of monsters and suggested they go home. She refused, saying something felt off about the dungeon. She sensed that the monsters were being guided by something, which meant there was a master. Dungeons with a master were extremely rare and incredibly dangerous. When he heard that, his face grew tense. She explained that only 2 kinds of beings could become dungeon masters, one being a dragon and the other something else. Before she could finish, they felt the same strange pressure Kidan had felt at the entrance. That eerie feeling confirmed the presence of a dungeon master, and it turned out to be the worse option. It was a lifeless king, a ruler of the undead. The lifeless king had once been a powerful and intelligent magician or high priest who had chosen to turn himself into an undead in his past life. Now, as the immortal monarch ruling over the dead, he stood before them. The lifeless king sensed Kidan's unusual mana and wanted to turn him into a corpse and make him his companion. Platy threw some of her potions, but they only healed the enemy. She shouted at Kidan to run and leave everything to her since she still had more potions. He refused to do that. He swung the sword he was holding and ran toward the lifeless king, shouting that he was her husband. Platy was about to stop him, but the lifeless king suddenly yielded, leaving both of them stunned. The lifeless king said that even though Kidan had struck him with a holy sword, the power he felt was terrifying. He laughed happily, saying he was glad Kidan had picked up that sword. He explained that the sword had originally belonged to him, but holy swords had wills of their own and chose their masters. Since the sword had chosen Kidan, it now belonged to him. Having lost the holy sword, the king said his duty in that world was finished. He told Kidan he was free to strike him down if he wished. Kidan felt uneasy and said he was probably not the rightful owner of the sword. He explained that he came from another world and had been given the power to become a master of any tool he held. He thought that power had reacted with the sword while he was using it. Before he could finish, the lifeless king cut him off in disbelief. He said that kind of power was a gift from the gods, something only spoken of in legends. A skill like that could not even be measured, which was likely why the guardians could not detect any skill in him. Someone blessed directly by a god should not even be called a hero. The lifeless king bowed deeply and called him a saint, asking for permission to offer him the highest hospitality. Platy felt proud of her husband and smiled at the king. The lifeless king then asked what had brought him to such a place. Keaton explained that he had simply settled down nearby. Platy added that exterminating monsters was essential for anyone living in that area, and that monster fur and bones were great materials for magic tools. Kidan was surprised to learn that dungeons in that world were actually useful. Platy then asked if it would be fine for her to go wild in the dungeon once in a while. The lifeless king agreed and said he was already dealing with the excess monsters himself, so they would be helping him. She suddenly seemed to like the lifeless king, and even called him their neighbor. They exchanged introductions, and the king struggled to remember his own name. In his past life, he had served as an archbishop of a certain church. For some reason, he had been pursued and forced to flee, eventually ending up in that dungeon. He had absorbed the stagnant mana there and turned himself into an undead by placing a powerful curse on himself. Over time, he seemed to have forgotten why he had even become undead in the first place. Platy and Keaton felt sorry for him, but from that day on, it seemed like his suffering, which mostly came from boredom, would ease at least a little. Keaton smiled and invited him to visit them sometime. He said they would welcome him with the vegetables they were growing and started calling him master. He explained that since the lifeless king had once been a high-ranking member of a church, he would call him master from then on. The lifeless king thanked him with tears in his eyes. That was how they gained a kind neighbor and also obtained the holy sword. In the next scene, Kidan finished building a smithing kiln. The holy sword was incredible and could cut through a boulder like it was warm butter. Platy wondered why he had made a kiln, and he reminded her about the mana metal ingot he had received from the lifeless king. She said the king was very kind, since it was rare for cave dungeons to have mana dense enough to form a single piece of mana metal, and giving it away so easily was a huge act of generosity. When she asked what he planned to make, he said he was going to make something he had always wanted. She assumed it would be a sword or some weapon, but instead he made a frying pan and a kitchen knife. To show her, he chopped vegetables with the knife and fried them in the pan, seasoning them with salt and pepper. When the fried vegetables were done, Platy absolutely loved them. He also made a few utensils. Mana steel turned out to be light, conducted heat well, and did not let food stick, which made cleaning easy. He felt excited that his cooking options had expanded. Platy asked if he wanted to add more new dishes, and he agreed. When she asked what he needed, he said meat was the top priority. She decided to take a walk in the forest. She explained that since she was a mermaid, she had never eaten a mountain-type monster before and had always wanted to try one. Seeing his confusion, she explained that monsters came in many types, like bird-type and mountain-type, with deer and boars being the best for cooking. That was why they went into the forest. Kidan mentioned that monsters were born from cave dungeons, but the lifeless king was controlling them so they would not spill out. That made him wonder if the mountain itself was a dungeon. Still, he did not believe a dungeon was nearby, so he stayed relaxed. Ironically, a group of square-shaped boars appeared and clearly wanted to fight. Unlike Kidan, Platy was excited that there were 2 dungeons nearby. He told her to focus while he handled the fight. She asked him to restrain them cleanly and not worry about how rough it looked. The boars attacked him one after another, leaving him no choice but to use his sword. He managed to defeat all of them. Platy praised him, though he felt it had only happened because they kept charging at him non-stop. She promised to use her potions to freeze and preserve it if he cut it into easy-to-cook pieces. After some time, they finished cutting and freezing the meat. Kidan was amazed and felt that thanks to her, their daily life would keep improving. She waited eagerly for him to cook something delicious, and he planned to make tonkatsu. Just thinking about it made his mouth water, but he realized something was missing: eggs. He asked if people in that world cooked bird eggs. As far as she knew, there was no such custom among mermaids, though she had heard land dwellers did it. She suggested heading to the mountains again to look for a bird-type monster. If they ran into another monster along the way, they would have to defeat it too. Suddenly, he sensed a powerful presence. They looked up and saw something descending from the sky. When it landed, they realized it was a dragon. The dragon demanded to know if they were the ones who had invaded the dungeon it ruled. Kidan stood frozen, while Platy pointed at the mountain and asked if that was the place. The dragon confirmed it. She then asked if he was the dungeon master, and he confirmed that too. The dragon introduced himself as Ginzel Dragonvale and demanded to know who had entered his dungeon, King Mountain, without permission and slaughtered his subordinates. Kidan hurriedly explained that they had not known the mountain was a dungeon. He apologized and promised they would never go there again. Ginzel refused to forgive them and declared he would erase Kidan's existence. He attacked by breathing flames. Platy panicked and screamed that they were going to die, but Kidan swung his sword and blocked the flames. The dragon was stunned, since a human should not have been able to do that. Platy felt proud of her husband as the dragon stared in disbelief at the unharmed surroundings. Kidan apologized again for entering the dungeon without permission and said that if the dragon still wanted to pursue the matter, he would fight him. He asked if the dungeon master was prepared to face death. Inside, he prayed the dragon would back off. The dragon stayed silent and stared at the sword. He then claimed the sword was his and tried to take it. Before he could, the lifeless king appeared, stopped him, and even punched the dragon. He apologized for the confusion. Seeing their confusion, the lifeless king explained that the dragon had come to his dungeon looking for intruders, and he had accidentally told him about Kidan. Kidan admitted it was their fault for entering the dragon's mountain without permission. The lifeless king scolded the dragon, saying that dungeon invaders were common and that leaving a dungeon over a shallow intrusion was reckless. He ordered the dragon to return to his mountain. The dragon refused, saying his father had ordered him to retrieve the holy sword from the lifeless king's body. The lifeless king explained that the sword had chosen Kidan of its own will. The argument heated up, and it looked like the two might fight. Kidan stepped in and told them to stop. He grabbed the dragon's tail, and the massive creature fell over like it weighed nothing. The dragon was stunned and tried to understand how Kidan had done that. Instead, Kidan calmly invited him to join them for a meal. He brought out a freshly cooked steak. When the dragon tasted it, he was completely enchanted. Both the dragon and Platy begged for more. As the dragon kept eating, his body began to glow and shrink. In the end, he transformed into a girl. The lifeless king calmly explained that dragons had the ability to take on human forms. The dragon girl said she had really liked the steak he made and told him she would come back for more after they ate. The dragon, whose name was Gitzel, warned him not to get carried away just because he could cook a little. She also threatened to burn that man to ashes if he ever got arrogant. After saying that, she turned back into a dragon and promised she would someday take the sword back from him and eat more delicious meat. Before leaving, she asked if there were any bird-type monsters in her mountain. He said he did not know how many there were, but they were pretty bony and not great for eating. She asked if they laid eggs, and it turned out they did. She said that with eggs he could make his meat dishes even tastier. Hearing that, the dragon immediately headed back to her dungeon to catch birds. Platy stopped her and said she should take her along since she understood monster ecology better. After they left, he smiled up at the sky, thinking about how lively his life had become. In the next scene, Kidan made a sword out of mana metal. It became the strongest sword in the world if the holy sword was excluded. Platy asked if he planned to sell it, but he said he wanted to upgrade Kakashi, the scarecrow. Platy thought Kakashi would chop up the annoying birds targeting their fields and told him to use it. When Kakashi started trying to kill birds, Kidan shouted that killing was forbidden, though it did not seem very possible anyway. Platy asked why he gave such a sword to a scarecrow, and he simply said it was because it was awesome. She did not really understand his sense of romance. It had been a while since Kidan had gone fishing. The last time he had done that, he had caught a mermaid and ended up married. As a former salaryman sent to another world, he had thought he would enjoy a slow and peaceful life, but his days had become full thanks to the mermaid who forced him to become her husband. Having moments of peace with the lifeless king and Dragonvale felt relaxing to him. While he was thinking about that, a head suddenly appeared on the surface of the ocean. A man with the same ears as Platy asked if he was friends with her. Before Kidan could answer, the man ordered his soldiers to kill him and anyone who resisted. Spears were thrown at him, and he immediately grabbed his sword, counterattacked, and defeated the soldiers. While he was wondering what to do next, Platy arrived and asked what was going on. The man who had attacked Kidan turned out to be Platy's brother. The soldiers called her princess, which left Kidan confused. Platy then properly introduced herself and explained that the man was her older brother, Prince Arowana, the next heir to the throne. She also introduced Kidan as her husband, shocking everyone. She said she knew he had come to take her back, but she would never return to the Mermaid Kingdom. Prince Arowana refused to accept that and ordered his soldiers to resume the attack and kill Kidan for violating and kidnapping his sister. He was determined to kill him and take Platy back. Platy told Kidan not to hesitate and to fight back, but he could not bring himself to attack her brother. The dragon arrived to help, and the soldiers panicked and fled. The dragon asked if Kidan was all right, while the prince stood frozen in shock. Platy told the dragon not to get too excited just because he was thanked. The prince did not even notice he was the only one left behind. As a reward for not running away, Gitzel threatened to turn him into charcoal. The prince was not intimidated and refused to listen. Platy agreed and said there was nothing more to discuss and that he should return to his kingdom. Kidan interrupted and said she could not talk like that. He said her brother had come because he was worried about her, and as her husband, it was his responsibility to listen to him. The prince thought about it for a moment and then changed his attitude. Kidan led him back to their home, and the dragon hoped to be treated to another meal. When they arrived, the prince scolded Kidan for letting his sister live in such a run-down house. Kidan felt ashamed and imagined many awkward scenarios. Platy told her brother to look at the other side instead, where they stored meat and vegetables from the mountain. The prince was amazed when he saw the plaster walls, and even more surprised by the factory where they made seasonings. He learned they were waiting for miso and soy sauce to be ready, which confused him even more. Platy proudly talked about how capable her husband was and how he treated her well. The storehouse even doubled as her magic compounding room. Kidan invited the prince to sit and eat a new dish. He mentioned that he had recently made a garden table where they could drink tea and eat. Kidan explained she was Ginzel Dragonvale's human form. He then served everyone zenzai, made from azuki beans. The prince and the others were shocked by how good it tasted. Gitzel asked for seconds, but since he had grown the beans by accident, there was only a small amount. Platy and Gitzel glared at the prince, thinking they could have eaten more if he had not shown up. The prince then bowed deeply and apologized for underestimating Kidan. He said he now considered him a saint or a sage. He was convinced his sister truly loved him and decided to leave her in his care. Platy was thrilled, but Kidan asked if that was really okay. It was the first time he had learned she was a princess, and he worried about her responsibilities and the expectations placed on her. Platy shouted that she did not care about expectations as long as she was married to him. The prince told her to calm down and explained that Kidan did not fully understand her situation. He revealed that there was a conflict over control of the surface world between humans and demonic beings, and the mermaids, who had stayed neutral, were now being dragged into it. Political marriages were being forced to decide sides. Kidan finally understood. The prince said proposals were coming from both human and magical factions, and the royal family was under pressure to choose. If they refused both sides, they would become enemies to everyone and be targeted. The prince realized that Platy had chosen to disappear and live quietly with Kidan to protect the kingdom. He turned to Kidan and said he was glad she had met someone like him. He begged him to protect her and marry her officially. Kidan said he would not mind marrying her properly. Vale suddenly interrupted and announced that she was going to marry him too. She started thinking about the holy sword, shared property after marriage, and how short a human's life was compared to a dragon's. She also thought about all the delicious food she would get to eat. She asked if he would marry her, and he immediately refused. She clearly had not expected that answer. So she asked him why, and he explained that he already had PL. She tried to convince him, saying it was totally normal for a strong man like him to have more than one woman. Even though he was strong, he wasn't interested in polygamy, and he wasn't even Vale's master. She suddenly started crying, which was the last thing he expected. He wanted to stop her tears, and when she screamed that she wasn't as strong as the lifeless king and that he hated her, he ended up accepting her proposal. While she celebrated, he apologized to the prince for doing all that in front of him. But the prince said that fathers with daughters all over the world usually understood situations like that. Meanwhile, PL clearly didn't like the idea of another woman. PL's brother left to report everything to their parents, and if they got their approval, the marriage would become official. She admitted that she had doubts about the marriage. She confessed that she had run away from home, and after being caught, she was forced to become his bride. Still, she said she had enjoyed herself and loved his cooking. She told him she wanted to stay with him forever, but worried that she was just being a burden. Kidan was surprised by her words, and knowing her situation, he said he didn't want to change how they were living right now. He had received a skill from a god, but since he was useless in fights, he had ended up living there. There was no way he was a strong human, but even so, he believed they could aim for a happy life. That was why, from that day on, he wanted her to stay by his side. Hearing that made her overjoyed, and she hugged him tightly. Just then, Vale showed up and said she was hungry, so he decided to treat them to a meal as a kind of wedding gift. In the next scene, Kidan decided they needed more help from others. He wanted to do something about the fields and manage and harvest the crops that were already ripe. On top of that, He had started making miso and soy sauce, and his hands were full now that he was married. He also wanted to build a proper home. When the lifeless king appeared and supported his decision, Kadan got scared because he hadn't even noticed him arriving. He asked if something was wrong, but the king said he just had some free time and came to hang out. Then the king showed him a large chunk of manhwa metal he had bought as a souvenir. Kadan was really happy about it, since it would help a lot. With that metal, he could make plenty of household tools, which was perfect for someone who was short on help. The other day, Patty's brother had pointed out a few things, and Kadan wanted to build something completely different from anything he had made before. That was why he was serious about building a house. PL suggested asking the lifeless king for help. Kadan didn't think it was a good idea, but the king casually asked how many people he needed and whether 10 would be enough. Before Kadan could even ask how they would get there, the king told him to wait a moment and transformed. When he came back, he brought several humanoid monsters from his dungeon, 5 orcs and 5 goblins. The monsters born in his dungeon followed his orders completely. He told them to obey the holy saint and do whatever they were told. When Kadan introduced himself, the monsters just stared at him with blank expressions. The lifeless king explained that they couldn't speak and weren't self-aware, even though they were smart enough to understand orders. He also said they didn't need rewards, and since they absorbed mana from the air, they didn't even need food. PL looked impressed and thanked the king for his kindness. The king wished them luck with the house and transformed again before leaving. Kadan told everyone to work together and build a great house with full effort. The monsters still showed no emotion, but they worked extremely well together. Kadan was impressed by how efficient they were. The orcs were perfect for heavy labor, while the goblins were very skilled with their hands. Because of their small size, the goblins struggled at first with tougher tasks, but when he taught them patiently, they slowly improved. There was nothing strange about getting help, but watching them work for him made Kadan treat them more kindly over time. PL watched him with admiration and warned him not to empathize too much, since they weren't living beings. She was technically right, but Kadan felt that everyone deserved a chance to live properly. She explained that magical beings often used humanoid monsters on a large scale to fight humans. These monsters were sent out like disposable armies, meant to be defeated, and even if they died, they could always be replaced by the dungeon. Kadan was shocked by that explanation, but even so, the monsters had helped them in many ways. He tried to accept the harsh world he was now living in. At one point, a goblin lost its balance and fell. Kadan rushed over to check if it was hurt, then remembered that it couldn't talk. Suddenly, the goblin mumbled that it was fine. Both PL and Kadan were shocked. When he asked again, the goblin confirmed it and said it wanted to work more for Kadan. Another goblin joined in, and soon the others also started talking, saying they wanted to help. It looked like the monsters had gained self-awareness. Kadan couldn't believe that something like that could happen so suddenly, and he thought it must be related to the power he had received. He reminded himself to be careful with his abilities, since they were far too incredible. Even so, his skill now allowed him to communicate with them. With tears in his eyes, he hugged the goblin. PL understood that they couldn't just use them and abandon them later. After some time, the house was finally completed. Vale was shocked when she entered it, since she hadn't seen it being built from scratch. She wanted to explore right away, but Kadan stopped her and told her to take off her shoes at the entrance. She clearly loved the house and looked like she planned to stay there, which was why he had built it so big. PL asked if he had made it large enough for the monsters to live in as well. That had been his intention, but when they refused, he suggested building a tenement house nearby for them instead. He also asked for their help with the kitchen and bathroom, and they happily agreed. A goblin he had named Goichi told him that the thing he asked for was ready and showed him a futon he had made. He said it was a present for PL. He explained that he had gathered grass himself to make tatami because he really wanted a proper futon in their new home. When PL lay down on it, she was shocked by how comfortable it was. Kadan apologized for making her sleep on plywood until then. She thanked him with sparkling eyes and also thanked Goichi. Later, PL's brother came to visit, and Kadan served him tea. The prince commented that building such a house in such a short time had to be a gift from a god. He explained that he had come to talk about Kadan and PL's marriage. He had spoken with his father, who was confused at first, but after hearing about Kadan's personality and strength, he agreed. It helped that Kadan didn't belong to any specific race, even though he was so powerful. Kadan mentioned how stressed PL had been because of the political marriage and asked about the reactions of humans and other magical races. The prince said many were angry, but his father, the Mermaid King, had convinced them by declaring Kadan a holy saint, which was why the marriage was approved. Even so, resentment still lingered after they had lost PL. But considering that hostile forces were also targeting Platy, it seemed better to leave things as they were. The prince bowed deeply once again, and promised that they would do everything they could to avoid causing him any trouble. He also begged him to take good care of PL. Kadan told him to stop bowing and said that he truly enjoyed being with PL and was grateful for her. He explained that he had arrived there completely alone, and if it hadn't been for PL, he would still be by himself. He even joked that he might have forgotten his own name one day, just like the lifeless king. The prince was confused when he heard that an undead king was actually his neighbor. Just then, one of the goblins rushed over and reported that enemies had attacked from the coast. A large group of monsters led by magical beings had landed, and the orcs and goblins were already fighting them. The prince couldn't believe that magical beings had discovered the place, especially since it was supposed to be one of their country's top secret areas. They went outside and confirmed that the ship really did belong to the magical beings. An orc named Orbo reported that they had captured the demon lord leading the attack. She was Astrus of Deception, one of the 4 heavenly kings. The orc explained that she had come to kill Kadan, which was why they captured her. Kadan noticed a large pile of bones nearby, and a goblin explained that they were skeleton soldiers led by magical beings. There had been around 100 of them, but all of them had been defeated. Hearing that shocked Kadan. He started lecturing the orcs and goblins, telling them how dangerous that fight had been and worrying that he could have lost them. Meanwhile, the demon lord grew irritated because he was completely ignoring her. The prince asked Astrus how she had found that place, but she ignored him and instead started insulting the mermaids. She warned him not to underestimate their intelligence-gathering network and said that even if it took forever, he would never fully understand it. She then broke free on her own and declared that her mission had been to bring back the mermaid princess and kill the bride thief, the holy saint. The goblins explained that she supervised the upper ranks of the demon lord's forces and was known for being bloodthirsty on the battlefield, a monster feared even by her allies. The prince didn't care about any of that and tried to attack her, but Kadan stopped him. At that moment, the lifeless king appeared and complained that they were being too noisy. The prince was left speechless when Kadan introduced the undead king as his neighbor. He was even more shocked when Vale appeared in her dragon form and casually asked what was going on. It wasn't just the prince who was stunned. Astrus was also shocked that a dragon was being treated like a normal guest. PL arrived and asked if everything was okay. The prince asked where she had been, and Vale explained that they had gone to the mountains to look for eggs and ingredients for tonkatsu. She said they had spotted the demon ship on the ocean and got curious. Vale became furious that a low-ranked demon had dared to come there to kill her master. She declared that hurting her master meant making an enemy out of her as well, and she threatened to wipe out their entire race. Kadan warned her not to speak so recklessly. Astrus looked terrified, so Kadan offered her a deal. He promised that they wouldn't be hostile toward her and would let her go home. Astrus was too proud to accept and accused him of insulting her, even though her voice shook with fear. She forced herself to stand and proposed a one-on-one duel. She said that if she lost, she would consider his offer. Vale got angry and tried to step in, but Kadan stopped her. His main goal in that world was to protect his peaceful lifestyle, so he accepted the duel and drew his sword. Astrus felt confident at first, thinking that no matter how strong his allies were, he was still just a human. But the moment she realized he was holding the legendary evil sword, Drish Schwartz, she dropped her weapon and fainted on the spot. Vale wanted to bury her right there and turn her into fertilizer, but Kadan refused. He asked Vale to take Astrus back to her homeland instead. The sailors were so shocked by Vale's appearance that they abandoned Astrus and fled. Vale accepted the task unwillingly. On the way, Astrus asked Vale why she was serving Kadan, but Vale didn't answer. The real reason, of course, was that she loved his cooking. Sometime later, Astrus returned with her followers and said she had something important to discuss. PL got annoyed and yelled at her to go home, while Kadan tried to calm her down. The girls behind Astrus explained that they had been expelled from the Demon King's army. Astrus corrected them, saying that she was the only one who had been cast out, and that the others could return if they wanted. Still, the girls clearly chose to stay loyal to her. Vale lost her patience and tried to call down thunder, but Kadan stopped her by threatening to cut off her meals, which immediately made her revert to her human form. Kadan said he felt sorry that Astrus had been expelled. Astrus explained that she had failed to bring the princess back, and that all the monsters she led had been completely wiped out. On top of that, dragging a dragon into a battlefield was considered a grave sin. Kadan was confused about how a dragon had even been involved in a human-demon conflict. Vale explained that she had simply sent the demon back to where she belonged. After that incident, Astras's title as one of the 4 heavenly kings had been revoked, and she had been exiled from the demon realm. The girls believed the decision had been rushed without the demon king's direct involvement, and were convinced it was all Sarvian's doing. Astras, however, didn't fully agree with them. Because strength meant everything in the demon king's army, she believed she was at fault for failing her mission. He understood that the uproar from the other day was probably the reason she was expelled, but he still felt there had to be something more, especially since the girls were all crying. Vale asked her what she wanted to talk about, and PL warned her not to say anything about taking responsibility. Nervously, she admitted that she wanted to start a new life and needed something to do. She said she had been shocked by how strong the goblins and orcs were against her army, and even more shocked to see 2 world-class calamities following him. She wanted to know what made him so special and begged him to let her work under him for a while. PL and Vale were stunned, but he accepted right away. He wasn't sure if working there would really change her, but he admired how she was trying to figure things out for herself, and he wanted to help. Vale warned him that helping her might cause the demons to come after him again, but he didn't seem worried. The other girls asked if they could stay too, and he agreed on the condition that there would be no bloodshed while they were there. She promised to obey him completely during her stay, and said she would endure anything, even humiliation. Hearing that, he decided to make a request right away. While the girls argued about how to help, his request turned out to be farm work. At first, he had planned to give them household chores, but he changed his mind. She didn't mind field work, since her skills suited it, but she complained that she was just hitting the same spot again and again. He explained that the tool she was using was called a hoe, and it was meant for digging soil and making ridges for planting seeds. Kadan commented that she knew a lot, and she replied that she had grown up as a commoner, so she had some experience. One of the girls mentioned that Asus and Pelena were born aristocrats in the demon country and had lived sheltered lives. Another girl told her to leave that aside, since she had already decided to serve the holy saint no matter what. Kadan thought about how earnest the demons were and told Bati to make ridges with the goblins. Meanwhile, Astras and Belena were told to plant seeds in those ridges, keeping a 30-centimeter gap between each one. They got back to work, but before long, Astras's back started hurting badly. Suddenly, Belena screamed because she felt something wriggling under the soil. Astras reacted too quickly, twisted her back, and caused a big mess. That was when Kadan realized this kind of work was impossible for them. He reassigned them to hunting with the orcs and goblins instead. That job suited a warrior like her much better. When she asked PL what they were hunting, PL said Kadan wanted to restock their meat supply, so they were going after square boars. When they heard movement nearby, Astras told the others to leave it to her, saying she would wash away her shame from the fields with this hunt. As the boars approached, she told Belena and Bammy to get ready. However, the orcs and goblins were so strong and worked together so smoothly that she couldn't even step in. Astras noticed that the axes and sickles they were using were made of manhwa metal. Seeing her surprise, PL explained that all their tools and weapons were made from mana metal, and the purity of that metal was extremely rare. Belena finally understood why they were so strong. When Astras first met them, they hadn't even been using weapons. PL added that even the hoe from earlier had been made of mana metal. Astras realized then that it wasn't the equipment that was lacking, but her own ability. She didn't want to just stand around, so she ordered the girls to take down any remaining boars. After a while, everyone except them had managed to hunt square boars. She never imagined that hunting such creatures in the mountains would be that exhausting. PL prepared to dress the carcasses, since they couldn't carry them back like that. Meanwhile, Kadan was already cooking a delicious meal. They arrived just in time. PL explained that they were upset because things hadn't gone as they expected. Astras said that as one of the Demon King's 4 heavenly kings, Astras of Deception had once been feared by humans and mermaids alike. But after coming there, she had lost her title. The residents were unbelievably strong. Their equipment felt godlike, and she had realized how powerless she truly was. Kadan told her she wasn't powerless at all. He said it wasn't just about strength, but about the people who chose to stand by her side. He reminded her that she had the power of charm, and told her it was okay to believe in herself more. He said that someday she would discover new possibilities within herself. Seeing that their spirits had lifted a bit, he invited everyone to dinner. Since the weather was nice, they decided to eat outside. The girls had never seen food like that before, so he explained that it was freshly grilled ginger square boar with tanjiru soup. The aroma alone made their mouths water. The taste was so good that Astris ended up tearing up from happiness. PL and Vale also praised the meal, and Kadan felt proud that he had been able to cook something everyone enjoyed. He encouraged them to eat well and cheer up, saying they would try again tomorrow. The next day, Astris went to Belina and said she couldn't find PL or Kadan anywhere. Belina said they had gone to the sea to take care of something. Astris had already finished harvesting the vegetables she was assigned, so she asked if there was anything else to do. Belina told her to pull weeds and then help clean the house. Vale, who was lying on the floor, casually said that people would die if they didn't work. Astris asked what that meant for her situation, but Vale only looked down on her and called her a lowly demon. Vale said Astris was doing nothing more than house-sitting. Belena thought it would be reassuring to have someone guarding the house and decided to stay behind while Kadan was away. Meanwhile, Kadan and PL were at the shore. PL said she needed to return to her mermaid form from time to time. Kadan asked if she felt more comfortable in the sea than on land, but PL said it felt the same to her. She said the medicine she made on land was top quality, and her life on land was comfortable too. Kadan thought about how considerate she was and asked what she wanted to talk about. PL explained that monsters came out of cave dungeons, mountain dungeons, and ocean dungeons in that area. Kadan realized that even things like fertilizer, disappearing herrings, and starfish were monsters. Some monsters were useful, but others weren't. PL warned him that there was a dangerous monster living deep in the sea. Kadan didn't like hearing that, especially since it was one of the top 5 monsters he really didn't want to meet. PL laughed it off and said that with him around, even that monster would be easy to handle. Kadan couldn't let PL go alone. PL prepared a water-breathing medicine and told him to put it in his mouth. She explained that as long as he chewed it, he would be able to breathe underwater. She warned him very clearly not to swallow it. Then they were ready to go. Kadan sometimes forgot that his wife, PL, was a mermaid because she usually stayed on the surface. Still, she truly was a mermaid, and that beautiful princess was his wife. Soon, they noticed something hostile approaching them. It turned out to be a spiny eel. PL told Kadan that she would stop its movement and asked him to handle the rest. She fought with all her strength, and the monster started burning. She then told Kadan it was his turn, so he delivered the final blow and killed it. Their task was finished, so they decided to head home right away. On the way back, Kadan noticed the seaweed around them. It couldn't even be used as a magical herb, and it grew so fast that it was nothing but a nuisance. He asked PL what she planned to do about it. He guessed it might be wakame, a type of edible brown seaweed. PL warned him not to say he was planning to turn eel and seaweed into a dish. As soon as they got home, Kadan cooked and told her it was just a test dish seasoned with salt and pepper. It turned out to be an Isekai'd-style wakame soup made from eel stock. PL tasted it and found it incredibly delicious. Even something she thought was useless turned out amazing. The refined flavor and the crisp texture of the seaweed impressed her, and she said her respect for him had skyrocketed. Kadan told PL that many people had supported him, and that he had realized how lucky he was to have that kind of support. He also realized that, since they were newlyweds, he needed to make time just for the two of them. Because of that, he suggested they go swimming together. PL was happy about the idea and said she would prepare a water-breathing medicine that would also let him talk underwater. She added that she would leave dealing with the monsters to him. Meanwhile, in the demon castle, Astris, one of the 4 heavenly kings, had not only been dismissed, but also exiled. The demon lord wasn't happy with that decision and questioned Rivarian, who had approved it. Rivarian reminded him that Astris had made a major mistake. The demon lord revealed that pushing Astris into that situation had been part of his plan. He drew his sword and pressed it to Rivarian's throat, calling him a traitor. While Rivarian begged for forgiveness, the demon lord warned him to pull himself together before his return and be capable of bearing responsibility on his own. After that, Rivarian gave him the coordinates of the transfer magic. The demon lord set off in a rage to find Kadan, saying that even demon lords were driven by passion at times. In the next scene, a girl named Momoko Isaka was fighting monsters as a hero. She shouted her attacks out loud like something straight out of an anime. Her goddess's sickle skill was the power she had gained when she was summoned to that world. She used it to fight alongside humans in the war against the demons. She struggled to adapt to the new world since there was no modern technology. Food was cooked over open fires. Bread was usually hard and stale. Beds had fleas, and clothes were made from rough fabric that irritated her skin. Because of that, many people summoned from other worlds didn't survive for long. When she was first summoned, there had been 9 others with her, making 10 in total. She wondered if the guy who had no skills was still alive in that harsh world. Without skills, survival was almost impossible. She, however, was different. Her skill was highly valued, which was why the king took care of all her needs. Having a skill gifted by a god was considered extremely rare. Her goal in that world was to keep fighting until her skill became the strongest of all. Even so, enemies kept coming, and the Demon King's army seemed endless. Still, she refused to give up and believed they had to protect that world as heroes. Suddenly, Vale appeared in her dragon form and terrified everyone. Both humans and demons froze, wondering why such a deadly dragon had shown up on the battlefield. Even with her special hero skill, Momoko knew she wouldn't be able to scratch that dragon's scales. The humans shouted for everyone to retreat, fearing they would all be wiped out by a single breath. The dragon spoke and said she had come to deliver a message to the lower tribes. She declared herself the Great Dragon Ruler, daughter of the Greaser Dragon Grinnell of Dragonvale. She explained that she was only running an errand for her lord, and had come to return that rude one, Astrus. When the demons noticed Astrus, they tried to capture her. Vale said she could have ended her right there and then, and they should be grateful to her lord for stopping her. She warned them that if they ever bothered her lord again, she would erase the city of Kisa and others with a single breath. To prove her power, she blasted the sky. Before leaving, she declared that her lord was the great Saint Kadan, and becoming his enemy meant becoming hers as well. Everyone was shocked that someone even higher than that dragon existed, especially since no one had ever heard of him before. Meanwhile, Kadan was happily eating breakfast, just like the day before. He planned to work hard in the fields again. Suddenly, the demon lord Zidane appeared and asked if he was the great Saint Kadan. Before Kadan could respond, a girl rushed in to report that Astrus had completed her first successful hunt. That was when they noticed Zidane standing there. He was surprised to see Astrus present and asked why she was there, though he ignored her question in return. He wondered why his best officer had left her forces without a word. The atmosphere grew tense as Astrus admitted she had failed to retrieve the mermaid princess. She also confessed that she had been publicly humiliated by a dragon. She said that a subordinate who failed her duties was useless. However, Zidane refused to let her go, saying he always needed her by his side. That only made the situation more complicated as they all went inside together. They talked quietly while drinking their tea. Kadan apologized for the way he spoke, saying it was his first time talking to an actual lord. As the demon lord, it had been his duty to lead the demon nations in their endless war against the human kingdoms. Every demon lord before him had carried the same responsibility of continuing that war. Kidan felt sorry for him because he had nothing waiting for him back home, no family or peaceful place to return to. Constant fighting had been exhausting, which was why he had been so grateful for Astra's assistant. She had been reliable, extremely loyal, and completely indispensable. Astras didn't think she deserved that kind of praise. Kidan asked if it was possible to pardon Asas or reinstate her, since he hadn't been the one who exiled her. The Lord said he wished it were that simple. Astras had been put on trial by a military tribunal and had been sentenced to exile for her failure. At the time, he had been on the front lines leading their forces and hadn't been able to defend her. Everything had been decided without his knowledge or approval. Several nobles had benefited from her dismissal and had used it to advance their own positions. At the moment, Astras had been blamed for angering the terrifying dragon that appeared on the battlefield and nearly wiped them out. The demon nations had been in chaos after that incident, and he hadn't been able to leave and calm things down. By the time he returned, Astras had already disappeared, so he went out to search for her. When he finally found her, Lord Zidane held her hands and told her not to leave him like that again. PL noticed what was clearly going on between them and asked Astras if she really liked the demon lord. Astras tried to deny it and said they had only been childhood friends, but no one seemed to believe her. Vil told everyone to stop talking and focus on the demon lord instead. She bluntly told him that if he wanted to go after his big-boobed friend, he should just do it, since he was the demon lord and could do whatever he wanted. The demon lord was shocked by how bold she was for someone who looked like a child. Astras then explained that she wasn't a child. She said she was the daughter of the Grazer dragon and one of the two calamities of that world. She revealed that she had been the dragon who appeared on the battlefield and threatened them all. She admitted that she had wanted to incinerate PL on the spot, but had gone through all that trouble to bring her back to him instead. Kidan said they would talk about that incident later. He thought saying Astras was surrounded by unusual people would have been an understatement. He could tell she owed them her life and felt deeply indebted to them. Even so, He said it was necessary for him to take Astris back home, so he challenged Kadan to a duel. Kadan tried to explain that a duel wasn't necessary at all. PL said it didn't matter anyway, since not only was her dear Kidan the master of Ginzel, the Dragon Veil, but the other calamity, the undead king, was there as well. The Lord was stunned when he heard that. Kadan said that Astris didn't belong to him or anyone else, so if she wanted to return with the Lord, that was her choice. Astris said that when she first arrived there, she had been lost and unsure of what to do. She had wanted to discover her potential and her place in the world. After listening to Lord Zidane, she believed her place was beside him. She felt she could reach her full potential and stay true to herself by his side. Kadan advised her to be honest with the Lord, just as he had been honest with her. After thinking it over, Astris made up her mind and swore she would always stay by his side, whether on the battlefield or even in the afterlife. The girls were overjoyed that the injustice of the four kings had finally been undone. PL suddenly stood up and interrupted them. She said the Lord's way of thinking was far too naive, especially since the other demon nobles expected him to become Astris's husband. The Lord admitted he didn't even know who PL was, so she introduced herself. She explained that the demon nobility had sent a petition to her father, proposing a marriage alliance. The Lord said he had known nothing about it and quickly swore to Astris that he hadn't been aware of any such plan. He asked her not to misunderstand. When Kadan thought about it, the situation started to make sense. Marrying Astris to the demon lord wouldn't have worked anyway, since her husband was Kadan. Still, someone clearly wanted to weaken his authority. Removing Astris from the four kings would shift the balance of power, especially since she had been his most trusted subordinate. PL asked him who he thought benefited the most from Astris's dismissal. There had only been one name on everyone's mind. PL explained that this person had been behind every major order. The demon lord grew frustrated, realizing that even if he took Astris back now, her past actions would be brought up again. The demon nobles would lose faith in him and see him as weak. At best, he would lose loyal followers, and at worst, they would demand he step down, clearing the way for that usurper. Kadan asked if there was anything they could do. PL said the marriage proposal wasn't just about an alliance, but also about producing heirs. By refusing to marry the mermaid princess, he would appear to be ignoring the future of his nation. PL said there was a simple way to solve everything and ruin that man's plan. Instead of returning as lord and subordinate, they should return as husband and wife. In other words, they should get married. The idea came suddenly, but Lord Zidane said he didn't mind marrying Astris. Making her queen would be the worst possible outcome for anyone plotting Astris's downfall. Anyone who wanted power close to the demon kings would want their daughter or sister to be the king's first lady. With that, it was decided they would get married. Astris admitted she didn't know how a marriage was supposed to work. PL explained that marriage required exchanging vows before God. When they looked confused, she said it meant standing before God and promising themselves to each other, with even destiny unable to interfere. Kadan mentioned that in his world, people had to fill out paperwork and register at an office to get married. He wondered how vows were supposed to be done. PL decided to demonstrate and called over the lifeless king. Lord Zidane was startled when he saw him and realized the rumors had been true. PL explained that she had called him to officiate their marriage. She said he had once been a great pastor of a large church and could have God witness their vows. The lifeless king hesitated and said they were demons, while he had served the human race when he was alive. PL hadn't expected that, and felt bad for not thinking things through. Kadan didn't understand the problem, so the king explained that different races worship different gods. Humans worshipped Zeus, the god of the heavens. Demons worshipped Hades, the god of the underworld. PL felt upset, but the lifeless king said he would see what he could do. After living for over 1,000 years, he had gained a vast amount of knowledge. Even if the teachings were different, he said he could study the proper prayer etiquette. PL asked if the Lord and Astris were okay with that, and they said they had no objections. The king decided to try and began the marriage ceremony. As he did, a heavy and solemn atmosphere settled over the surface of the world. Something slowly began to take shape, and then it appeared the god of the underworld, Hades. The lifeless king seemed to have summoned him by accident. He had only meant to offer a prayer and create holy ground for the wedding ceremony. Hades spoke calmly and said something like this hadn't happened in a long time. He asked why he had been summoned and whether the human race had finally started an Armageddon. The Lord knelt down and explained that the conflict with humans had continued to go back and forth. It was a situation where he couldn't let his guard down, but it wasn't something Hades needed to worry about. Hades repeated his question and asked the Lord to introduce himself. The Lord did so and explained that he had asked for a woman's hand in marriage. He said they had been performing a wedding ceremony and wished to receive God's blessing, but they had ended up summoning Hades by mistake. He apologized for disturbing him. Hades didn't seem bothered by it. However, he said that if he was going to grant his blessing, the woman had to be his one and only. He asked whether the Lord could swear that he would love her for the rest of his life. That was all the Lord had ever wanted. He wanted to spend his life with Astrus and no other woman. After hearing that, Hades granted them his blessing and disappeared. Kadan thought it was surprising how kind gods could be. Vil pointed that out loudly, while the lifeless king promised to be more careful with prayer ceremonies next time. On top of that, receiving a blessing directly from a god gave the couple divine protection. Anyone who tried to forcefully sabotage their relationship would face divine punishment. It became the strongest proof of love the Lord could show to his fellow demons. The Lord thanked Kadan for making his dream of marrying Astrus come true. Astrus said they would never forget his kindness for the rest of their lives. Kadan said he didn't want all the credit and told them he was simply happy for Astrus. The Lord then asked Astrus if they should return and introduce her as the demon queen. Unexpectedly, Astrus refused and said she wanted to stay there a little longer. Vil wasn't happy about that and told her to go home since they were already married. When the Lord asked for her reason, Astrus said she wanted to retrain herself as his wife. He was surprised but respected her decision. He then asked Kadan if he could look after her for a bit longer. Kadan said that wouldn't be a problem, though he didn't know how he could really help. He felt a little guilty, especially since the newlyweds would be separated. Then the Lord asked if he could also stay there for a while. Kadan was shocked and asked if that would cause trouble back home. The Lord said it should be fine for a short time. Because of the dragon that had appeared on the battlefield, both sides were still shaken, and no troops would move until more information was gathered. Vale seemed to regret her earlier concerns, since there was no real issue. Kadan welcomed them staying for a while and even started thinking about building another house for them. Vil interrupted and warned the Lord that staying there meant no one was managing things back at his camp. If he left his center exposed, someone might try to plot something dangerous. The Lord said he had already considered all of that before making his decision. Vil still wasn't convinced. She also found it strange that he had arrived without a ship. The Lord explained that he had used teleportation magic. Since he had set up a teleportation point beforehand, he could travel instantly. Astrus's subordinate, Belena, had left him a memo with the coordinates. Belena said the idea of them being separated because of some shady plot had frustrated her. They thanked her, but Platy suddenly asked if other demons could teleport there as well. The Lord told her not to worry. He said the coordinates were encrypted, and unless the one who created the encryption revealed them, finding the place was nearly impossible. On top of that, the entire area was blocked from recognition. At that time, demons used teleportation and clairvoyance magic to locate distant places, but a powerful restriction spell canceled both. The area had been completely sealed off. The Lord said it had been all or nothing when he tried teleporting, but thanks to Belena, he had made it there. Others wouldn't be able to reach or even sense him. Kadan wondered who had set up such a convenient barrier. The lifeless king said only a dragon could use magic like that. Bale didn't bother hiding it and admitted she had placed the barrier to stop demons from coming. Even so, he had still managed to arrive. Kadan knelt before her and asked if she really cared about him that much. Vil approved and said it was only natural since she wanted to eat her hot master's cooking. She kept it all to herself, and they finally understood it wasn't because she hated them. He patted her on the head and thanked her for always looking after him. Then it was time to celebrate the marriage. Kidan prepared a huge feast to congratulate them. Seeing the Lord still looking shocked, Kidan explained that it was the same meat Astrus had caught earlier that day, the Kirisaki deer. PL had prepared it using magic seasoning. It wasn't just his work either, since everyone had helped. Vil said they were all meant to serve her master and her, and she added that she had thought about them in many ways too. PL was amazed by how good everything tasted. The Lord said it was better than anything served in royal palaces. He finally understood why the dragon wanted to hide that place. PL asked how Kidan had learned to cook like that. He said he had lived alone before, so he cooked for himself. Thanks to his skills, he had been able to recreate ingredients and dishes not native to that world, which was probably why it tasted so good. In the end, he was just happy everyone enjoyed it. Aos wondered if Kidan's cooking was some kind of state secret. She suddenly knelt and asked if he could teach her how to be a proper newlywed bride. CL scolded her for asking another woman's husband for that. Ooze felt upset and said that aside from swinging hand chops, there wasn't much she could do. Kidan tried to cheer her up by saying it was thanks to her that his crops and cooking turned out so well. He also said that since she was now a queen, It would be better if someone like Koku took care of her. She disagreed and said she needed to improve herself as Demon Lord Zidan's dutiful wife. The Lord then asked Kidan to train him as well. Kidan didn't understand at first and asked if he really meant bridal training. The Lord agreed and said that everything there, from cooking to farming to construction, was fascinating. He said he now understood why his wife wanted to study there, and he also wanted to support Astris as her husband. He believed married couples should support each other, just like Kidan did. PL bragged that he wasn't like other kings who just sat around in castles. Everyone agreed they were counting on Kidan. The following days passed with construction work and training Lord Zidan. Unsurprisingly, he turned out to be good with his hands. Astris came by one day to tell them the food was ready, wearing a cute apron. The Lord blushed when he saw her like that and thought he was in heaven. They sat down to eat, and the food was delicious as always. The Demon King even cried from happiness. He asked what the dish was called, and Astris said it was called nikujaga. Kidan said she had made it herself and was already good with a kitchen knife. All she needed now was to learn more about ingredients and seasoning. Astris asked what else was needed for bridal training, and Balana said learning to sew clothes was also important. She noticed what the Lord was wearing, and Kidan explained he had made it himself. He said he could make clothes for men, but even though he had promised to make some for Platy, he couldn't come up with a design yet. He showed them some fabric he already had, and Belina was shocked by its quality. Kidan explained that while exploring the mountain dungeon, he had found caterpillars that produced thread. He had brought some back to raise as an experiment, which was how he made the fabric. Everyone realized again how unusual his ideas were. That meant it was fine to make clothes for girls too. Bina said her parents had run a tailoring workshop, so she knew a lot about sewing. Kidan suggested starting by making clothes for Platy first. Bina took out her tools and said it was time to measure her properly. She told everyone to relax, since she would eventually make clothes for all of them. PL joked and asked if that meant everyone would have to strip and take off their pants. The girls were shocked and asked if she always went commando. PL didn't understand what commando meant and wondered why people reacted that way whenever she stripped. The girls then remembered that since PL was a mermaid, she didn't have the concept of wearing clothes on her lower half. PL asked if there was a problem, and Bina explained that for demons and humans living on the surface, exposing the lower half in public was considered a crime. PL was shocked and got angry that no one had ever told her. She remembered that her brother sometimes wore something called panties. Bina told her to leave it to her. She even showed off the beautifully made panties while taking PL's measurements. Bammy noticed that PL was sucking in her stomach. PL had never felt bad about eating Kidan's delicious food until that moment. They measured Astris as well, and her stomach turned out to be a bit rounder than they had expected. After some time, Bammy finished making Platy's skirt. The frills were inspired by ocean waves, and the skirt was blue. Platy clearly loved it, and Kidan thanked Bammy. While they were still talking about the panties Bammy had made, Vil suddenly threw a fireball at Platy's skirt. Kidan was about to scold her, but Vil told him to stay quiet and look closely. The skirt didn't burn at all, which meant the fabric had strong anti-magic woven into it. Vil was almost certain it also had high defensive power, making it better than armor. Bammy said she hadn't done anything special to the fabric, so they wondered if the caterpillars themselves had that ability. Bale asked Kidan if he had done something to them. He said he had only treated them gently while hoping to make good clothes for Platy. Bale then realized what had happened. Orcs and goblins had grown stronger after meeting him, so the same thing must have happened to the caterpillars. Vil demanded that Bammy make armor for her too, but Bammy complained that it wasn't armor, it was fashion. Since the Demon King's clothes were originally cotton meant for futons, Bammy planned to remake those as well. Astris noticed that Kidan's clothes were slightly torn and said she would fix them. He thanked her, took off his shirt, and Astris began sewing it. Kidan watched them and decided to let the king stay there a bit longer. Meanwhile, in the human kingdom, the king was thinking about the dragon veil. Because of her, the war had reached a stalemate. He kept thinking about what they should do next. One of his men reported that the generals at the front still didn't know why the dragon had appeared. Because of that, the army had advised against making any moves. The king called them cowards and demanded information about the dragon's master, but there was nothing new. The king complained about how useless everyone was and ordered another cup of squeezed fish juice, which smelled terrible. King Junus the 18th had planned to end the centuries-long war with a decisive victory for humans. They had used up the nation's mana to summon heroes from another world to crush the demon race and exploit them. However, with the dragon involved, they couldn't move forward. When his drink arrived, The king asked if the dragon's master even existed. His man said many people doubted it, but if they made a wrong move and provoked the dragon, total destruction would follow if it appeared again. That idea sparked something in the king's mind. He ordered his man to find Saint Kadan. If Kadan served the human kingdom, victory would be guaranteed. The man hesitated and said finding him wouldn't be easy. The king told him to form a search party made up of capable heroes. Junis temporarily disbanded the army and redirected all resources toward finding Kadan. He was confident that once they found him, humanity's victory would be secured. Back at Kadan's place, Zidane and Astris were drinking tea. 2 months had passed since they arrived, and they had learned many things. Their departure was getting closer, but Zidane wanted to feel a sword in his hands again. When he swung one, he suddenly paused. Astris asked what was wrong. He said the holy sword felt restless after just one swing, as if it was resonating with something. They went outside to tell Keaton. Zidane noticed the sword Keaton was holding. Keaton explained how useful it was, and said he had just used it to cut mana metal. Platy then explained that the sword was a holy blade they had taken from the undead king's dungeon. Zidane couldn't believe Keaton possessed the legendary evil sword, Dr. Schwartz. Keaton said he had planned to return it, but the sword refused to leave him. Platy mentioned the time Keaton defeated the undead king to protect her. Keaton said they hadn't had a choice back then and that he hadn't even known about the divine power he had received. Zidane recalled legends saying a saint's power could surpass that of a hero, which matched what the undead king had said. Zidane asked if Keaton was one of the heroes summoned from another world. Keaton confirmed it but said he had been dismissed because he lacked combat skills and ended up living far away from humans. Astris felt sorry for him, but Keaton showed them how he worked with soil and explained that his skill was better suited for peaceful living. It was impressive, though not useful in battle. Zidane still couldn't understand how Keaton was stronger than even the undead king. Keaton explained that his skill brought out the maximum potential of whatever he touched, but it didn't make him strong by himself. Zidane disagreed and said no one in that world could withstand his power. He asked if Keaton would return to the human kingdom and prove his superiority. Keaton refused and said he wasn't affiliated with anyone because he didn't belong to anyone. That freedom was also how he had been able to marry Platy. Zidane said that without Keaton, the conflict between humans and demons would have worsened, especially with the mermaids getting involved. He believed Keaton's existence was vital to the world. It was finally time for Zidane and Astris to return home. Zidane planned to crush those who opposed him and regain the trust of his people. Keaton encouraged him, while Vil complained as usual. She asked why the girls weren't going back. Bolina explained that as long as she stayed there, the Demon King could visit any time, and she would act as the bridge between that land and the Demon Nation. Bamie said she wanted to continue making clothes there. As a gift, Bamie gave Astris a dress she knew the Demon King would love. Astris adored it and thanked her sincerely. They prepared to leave, and everyone wished them luck. As they departed, Zidane admitted he had once believed peace between humans and demons was impossible. Keaton's existence made him realize that dream hadn't been foolish. He asked Astris if she would help him make that dream come true, and she gladly agreed. In the final scene, Keaton finished baking bread. Everyone loved the taste. He explained that it was a staple food in his world, and that wheat flour could be used for many other things too. He then told the girls there was another crop he had been thinking about growing. Next, he planned to make the real staple food from his world, so he said he wanted to start producing rice. PL immediately spoke up and pointed out a problem. She explained that the orc team handled construction, the goblin team worked the fields, Bamie was the tailor, Bolina managed the waypoints, Vil claimed she was protecting the land, and Platy was in charge of medicine, fermentation, fertilizer processing, miso and soy sauce production at the brewery, plus managing the fridge and crop warehouse. She said there was no way she could handle all that work alone. Keaton suddenly felt incredibly guilty and practically threw himself at her to apologize. He admitted there were so many things he wanted to do that he had completely forgotten how much work she was already handling. While they were talking, Platy's brother showed up and asked what all the noise was about. Keaton immediately apologized to him for being a failure as a husband, which completely caught him off guard. PL asked her brother why he was there, and he explained that after negotiating with the saint the other day, they had agreed to sell the pickled radishes produced there through him, so he had come to buy them. PL scolded him for ordering in bulk again, especially since the lifeless king next door loved them too. While complaining, PL realized her fields were seriously understaffed, and an idea suddenly hit her. She told her brother that the best people to balance her workload were merfolk, who specialized in pharmaceutical magic. She demanded that he bring several people from the Mermaid Kingdom, or she would reduce pickled radish production. Before the prince could respond, she asked Kadan what he thought. Kadan said he was fine with it as long as the prince agreed too. PL pushed her brother harder, saying she wanted to feed rice to her dear husband. The prince then asked Kadan if he really understood what the shore meant to merfolk. Kadan said he initially thought they hated it, but Platy had eventually grown to like it. The prince explained that PL was the strange one, because most merfolk viewed the shore as a living hell. Merfolk couldn't survive on land under normal circumstances, and Platy choosing to live there by her own will was extremely rare. He added that it was only thanks to her new medicine that he could freely move between land and sea. Before that, the potion had been crude and dangerous, with side effects like losing one's voice, turning into bubbles, or disappearing entirely. Vil couldn't understand why anyone would accept such risks and bluntly told him to just stay in the water. The prince said that wasn't an option, since the potion was an important resource for diplomacy. He went on to explain that even with the improved medicine, most merfolk would never come to land. After the new medicine was completed, their kingdom had introduced a new punishment system. Instead of only using execution, criminals could now be banished to the surface. Without the antidote, they would be forced to live out their lives in an unknown world. Everyone looked horrified after hearing that. PL didn't care at all and told her brother to deal with it since he was the prince. After thinking for a moment, he said that any helpers sent to PL would need to be skilled in potion making. However, even using the royal palace's human affairs team, long-term deployment to the surface would be difficult. PL then suggested bringing those banished criminals instead. That suggestion shocked everyone. The prince scolded her for saying something so reckless. Kadan said he didn't mind, but he didn't want Platy to be put in danger. Vil immediately got angry and said she would just burn anyone who caused trouble. The prince actually liked that idea, since under those conditions, even criminals would have no choice but to behave. PL told her brother to bring 3 criminals if he wanted to keep eating the pickled radishes. She said she didn't care whether they were criminals or not, as long as they were capable, and added that criminals might actually be better since she planned to work them hard. Not long after, the prince returned with 3 girls who weren't wearing panties. Vil shrugged and said that since they were criminals, it didn't matter. Bammy had expected this and had already prepared clothes for them. The prince introduced the girls one by one. The first was Puffer, the one in the middle was Lampy, and the last was G. Even though they were all girls, he warned Kadan not to let his guard down. Kadan thanked them for coming and introduced himself, but the girls looked hesitant. PL stepped forward and told them to get ready. The girls froze when they saw her. The prince explained that the 3 of them would serve their sentence by working under his sister, Princess Platy. Lampy looked thrilled when she saw her and tried to hug her. She said she was just happy to be able to serve her again, even if it was only once more in her life.